July 8th, 2017. Another lesson in the New Testament is Fake series. This lesson is entitled, He That Is Cursed. Looking here at Deuteronomy chapter 21 and trying to show here that the so-called Hebrew Messiah, Yahweh Jesus, was cursed because, like the scriptures are showing, he hung on a tree. So I'm going to read it here. I'm going to read from the Catholic version of the Bible, NRSV version. I'll read a couple verses here, 2 or 3 verses. And when you read this chapter, you see that a couple verses prior to what I'm going to read is talking about a son that will not, carry himself properly, and so he should receive judgment, which would be a curse on him, and the son would be stoned because he won't change, and so will you purge evil from the land. That's Deuteronomy 21:18 to about 21. So Deuteronomy 21 verse 22, it says, when someone is convicted of a crime punishable by death and is executed, and you hang him on a tree, his corpse must not remain all night upon the tree. You shall bury him that same day, for anyone hung on a tree is under God's curse. You must not defile the land that the Most High your power is giving you for possession. So if he's hung on a tree, he's under a curse. So we understand that this so-called Messiah unto Israel is under the curse of the Most High. It looks at first, when he was a baby or when he was doing his earlier part of his ministry, that he came for a blessing, and he came with the blessing of the Most High and the direction of the Most High, and he went for 40 days fasting in the wilderness and returned with the power. But the one who returned with the power from fasting and temptation in the wilderness clearly ended up being seen as one who was under a curse. And we know there are lots of people who pretend to do mighty things in our world, and they were doing all kinds of healing ministries and healing crusades and so on. But this same Yahweh Shai, who seemed at first to have come into public ministry from a time of 40-day fasting and successfully making it through a time of temptation from even the devil himself, apparently, ends up being the focus of a curse from the Creator, because the scriptures say people who get hung on a cross, they are under a curse. So you might go on to thinking, although I won't address it here, when did this curse from the Creator begin in the life of this so-called Hebrew Messiah? Because if someone is under a curse, they would be guilty of something. Right away you're going to say, well, sin was credited to him, sin was put on his account. Well, let's look at it some more here. Because it seems more to me that he was under a curse, because his life was carried in such a way, or presented to us in such a way, where he was pretending to be, from the writers in the New Testament, one who was going to give the final solution to sin in the life of the quote-unquote believer or the Israelite, and by extension, for those that believe the rest of it, to the Gentile that believes on Christ. Even though the Old Testament prophets already told, like Isaiah and Micah, that the Gentiles that end up believing are going to believe on Torah only and know Jesus Christ or Yahushua, and will come to Jerusalem to learn Torah. They receive a transformation in their lives by coming to a Torah teaching from the Most High through Israel in places like Isaiah 2 verse 2 and 3. Nothing is mentioned of the Gentiles coming to do with anything about Jesus or Yahushua. So then, this Messiah from the New Testament is likely under a curse because he is trying to deceive the Israelites as well as the rest of the world, that he is the one who will give them salvation through his death, when salvation, even for the Gentiles, are going to come through Torah, as the Torah is pushed from Jerusalem in the end by the Israelites who prior to that returned to Torah themselves and were rescued from the different nations that they were scattered in. So this New Testament Messiah has shown himself to the world in this way, and as such ended up receiving a curse from the Most High and was strung upon a cross. And his curse resulted in his death. Let's look now. The book of Joshua, chapter 4 and verse 5. And Joshua said unto them, Pass over before the ark of the Most High your power into the midst of Jordan. Wait, that's not, or I might have meant Judges. Let me see if I meant Judges. Yeah, Judges, chapter 4, verse 5. And she dwelt under the palm tree of Deborah between Ramah and Bethel in Mount Ephraim, and the children of Israel came up to her for judgment. See again the palm tree, showing again that trees are sometimes associated with decision making, and righteousness, and deciding on matters of righteousness and good living and so on, and judgment. Run over now to Galatians chapter 3 from the New Testament. Where is that here? Chapter 3 and verse 13. Now, it says here, Christ hath redeemed us from the curse of the law. Yet we are still living under the curses. We're suffering still from the curses. But has redeemed us from the curse of the law for 2,000 years now, but we're still living under the curses, being made a curse for us. So they're not denying that he was cursed. And who would have cursed him? As I read in Deuteronomy chapter 21, he was cursed of the Most High. And that curse was shown through the people of the land when they crucified him and shouted, Crucify him, crucify him. Why? Because if the people of the land, according to the Most High's instructions in Deuteronomy 21, are going to hang someone on a tree to show that the person has been cursed for something that they've done to deserve such a curse from the Creator, then the people are telling you that they do not receive this person, they do not accept this person based on what they have done. And so the curse from the Creator is going to come upon them. We're going to string them up on the tree and curse them, kill them. So if in the New Testament they're saying, crucify him, they are saying that since they're Israelites, even though the Romans are ruling over them, they know the law and they're carrying out the law. And because they know the law, they know this man should not be seen as a Messiah unto us, so they're going to crucify him, they're going to kill him. But because they weren't carrying out their punishments fully on their own, because the Romans were ruling over them and would decide on certain cases and so on, then the Romans were handling it, but the people of Israel still had a voice in it. So they said, crucify him, crucify him. Why? Because they know they should push for that kind of death on a tree based on their law. So they must have found something that made him guilty to be cursed by the Creator. So they said, yeah, this man is an impostor, he is a liar, he is deceiving the nation, crucify him. That is the feeling of the Israelite at the time. And so the Israelites felt he should die. So whatever drove them to that point, they felt he should die, so they said, crucify him. So Galatians 3 verse 13 continues, being made a curse of the law, being made a curse for us. For it is written, curses everyone that hangeth on a tree. So we find that the New Testament is very confusing because it goes in and out of truth in order to pull off its deception. They're clearly showing you that the tree death proves that he was guilty of death, that the Israelites could even see that, but they're trying to spin it off since it's a Roman document to show you that there was a good reason for him dying. When they were hanging people on a tree according to the Moses' instructions in the Old Testament, did people feel it was a good reason? There's going to be blessings coming out of this? Or would mothers go home crying that their child was crucified and so on? Did fathers feel bad over this? And did the rest of the people say like, yeah, we're glad? People were pushing because something went wrong and this person had to be killed. So curses everyone that hangs on a tree. So Christ, this Messiah, was cursed. Now, when you look at like a Messiah, they say like Cyrus coming. Was he a curse when he was approaching Israel to rescue Israel out of their dilemma from their time of captivity? Was he a curse? And did the people push to curse him as a so-called Messiah, or did they more see him as a blessing coming from the Most High of Israel? Did the Israelite at the time who was in captivity and wanted to be freed see Cyrus as a curse from the God of Israel as he approached them, or did they see him as a blessing? If they saw him as a curse, did they want to kill him? Or did they receive blessing from him, which was just a blessing from the Creator? When Moses came, did they see Moses as a curse coming to add to the curses that they were experiencing from the hand of the Egyptians? Or did they see Moses as a blessing and received and accepted him? You see the difference now between this Moses situation and Christ, or Cyrus and Christ? They looked at these kind of deliverers sent by the Most High as a blessing. But this Hebrew Messiah in the New Testament is looked upon a curse, so that a lot of Israelites were clamoring, saying, crucify him. So what I find in the Old Testament is that when Israelites were in captivity or in some kind of a bondage, even with Samson coming and so on in the book of Judges, you see all these different rescuers coming, risen up from the Most High. Church of Israel usually saw the one that came as a blessing from the Most High, so they received this person. So no matter how much they were in captivity or bondage in the Old Testament, they still had enough Torah knowledge to identify when the Creator sent a deliverer, and they did not kill this person as a normal response to the person coming from the Most High. But the Israelites who hated being under the Romans, till they even had zealots who were trying to fight the Romans, looked at the greatest deliverer sent from the Creator, who was the first spirit made in creation, they say. They looked at the so-called Lamb of Calvary that was going to bring their salvation, that was so powerful that the salvation even reached beyond the bounds of the Israelite and reached unto Gentiles, to offer salvation unto Gentiles, according to New Testament so-called thinking, and looked at this deliverer and said, crucify him. but you let yourself continue to remain under the erroneous teachings of Jesus pushers, of Hebrew Mashiach teachers. When there are even Gentiles in the world who are teaching that something is wrong with this Hebrew Messiah. So Galatians 3:13 ends up, cursed is everyone that hangeth on a tree. They're telling you that your Mashiach was cursed and received that kind of judgment on a cross. But the so-called Mashiachs from the Old Testament, like Cyrus and Samson and Moses, instead of being strung up on a tree, they were received and welcomed. And the usual evident time period after that was a time of blessing for Israel, as in the case of Moses. Israel went into a time of blessing and growth after they were delivered by their Mashiach in their time. He that is cursed. Let's run back now to Deuteronomy chapter 21 and verse 23. His body shall not remain all night upon the tree, but thou shalt in any wise bury him that day. For he that is hanged is accursed of the Most High. That thy land be not defiled, which the Most High thy power giveth thee for an inheritance. So in the case of Jesus, they tried to take down this so-called Hebrew Mashiach after he died. Why? Because according to the law, they did not want to curse the land any further, seeing that this Mashiach had already been identified of them as being a curse upon Israel. They didn't want to curse the land any further, so they obeyed Torah some more by taking his body down off the cross. Shows that Israelites were still mindful of keeping Torah even though the Romans were ruling under them. Because they were keeping Torah, they could identify the false Messiah and said, crucify him. After he died, they still continued to keep Torah instructions by removing him from the cross, showing you that it's a deception by the Romans at that time, because Israelites were still minding of Torah, because they got in this position of the Romans ruling over them because they fell off of Torah a long time ago, went into Babylon and captivity and so on, and the Assyrian captivity, and they knew their nation was just going down and down with curses from the Most High. They didn't want any more curses, so they said, let us carry out Torah now, so we don't receive any more curses upon the land. Let us take his body down from the cross, like the Most High said. Proof that Israelites keeping Torah at that time, even under the Romans, were paying attention to the Torah. So they would not have received him again, which is why I tell you all the time that they fled from the Romans and this Jesus, Roman-inspired Jesus teaching. They fled into parts of Africa, fled into Egypt and so on, because they were being killed because they did not want to accept this Jesus. So the Romans had to get them out of the way so that their Jesus Christian religion could flourish. That's why they fled, because they were keeping Torah, so they knew not to accept this so-called fake Mashiach. So since they received other people like Samson and Cyrus wasn't even an Israelite, but the Spirit of the Most High was activating this man to come and do stuff, so they could see this was a move of God, so to speak, so they were going along with what he was doing. And they received Moses and so on. Why would they not accept but crucify the living Son of God, who was their Messiah, who supposedly, according to the scripture, ate a Passover meal with them? Isn't that odd? That's really strange. They crucified him because he was not received of the people. It's Roman trickery that's letting you think that. And it's a spread of Christianity, the religion that they made up of the lifestyle of the Israelite, to make a story like that is found in the New Testament, that makes us feel now that we've come out of slavery that he was really our Messiah. But the Israelites at the time knew he was not. And for those who say Jesus taught the law and so on, why is it that the use of this Roman Hebrew from Judah called Jesus or Yahushua Christ? How come if he taught the law, the biggest religion run off him, Christianity, does not eventually lead people to the law? Because if the Most High is doing something, it leads to his law. But somehow it seems that most people who deal with him in the Christian religion just can't seem to find their way to the law, no matter how much they read his book all the time. You mean the deception is that strong that they can't just eventually say, wait, but we should be keeping the law? Only few clue into that. Luke chapter 24 and verse 7, saying, the Son of Man, apparently Christus is speaking in this verse, must be delivered into the hands of sinful men and be crucified the third day and rise again. Big trick. Because I don't find precepts in the Old Testament showing that people who received a curse of being hung on a cross that was made from trees, there are no precepts there that I've found that show that people who received such a curse lived again after they were hung on a tree. So people could give him a curse, a tree curse from the Most High that was based in Torah, and he's going to get up and live again, but other people couldn't live again. They found him worthy of death, and then the Most High is going to make him worthy of life in 3 days. Very strange. So precepts show, though, that Israel in captivity were, instead of being redeemed from a single person dying for them on a tree or something like that, Israelites in captivity were redeemed after a time of punishment that they served. Like I told you enough times in the book of Judges, after they served a certain time, the Most High would raise up someone who didn't die to pay some ransom of death to their captors that were holding them in captivity. They didn't die for the Israelites to be redeemed. So this Jesus stuff just does not make sense. Let's look now at 2 Corinthians chapter 5 and verse 21. It says, for he hath made him to be sin for us, who knew no sin, that we might be made the righteousness of God in him. Yet I'm showing you that the Israelites were saying, crucify him, crucify him. Because when they looked at Torah, they could see this man pretending to be all sinless and so on, and accusing him to be the Son of God and so on. So they're like, no, kill this man. Because they knew if he's going to prove to be the Son of God, the living Son of God, then he can pull off any deception to the rest of the nation of Israel. So they say, yeah, crucify him. Because they knew he was no Son of God like that. Like no personal Son of God that was living up in heaven and coming down. Because Israelites never told that, never taught that in the Old Testament. So they said, crucify him. So he was guilty of death. So they hung him on a tree, because he was claiming to be something that he was not, and then that would be used to pull off deception in the earth, within Israel. So there you go. That's why they crucified him. So he was not crucified because he was sinless. He was crucified for teaching false teachings, to be equal with God and so on, and to be the Son of God. So they crucified him on a tree. Romans chapter 5 verse 13. For until the law, sin was in the world, but sin is not imputed where there is no law. Now these New Testament thinkers try to make you feel that because of the law somehow you get sin and so on. Sin is more imputed to you, not because of the law, but because of the breaking of the law or breaking of Torah. We know the curses in Deuteronomy 28 says if you keep my commandments and so on, then you get all these blessings. But if you don't keep it, then you get curses. So it is the breaking of Torah that makes you guilty. So they should have written this different if they were trying to teach some truth, so that it would say something like sin is imputed. Oh, well, actually, yeah, I see now. You see that? You see the real understanding here now? That sin is not imputed where there is no law. They should have more been explaining now that sin is imputed to you when there is no law, meaning you don't live according to law. There is no law in your heart, so you are not living by Torah. See that? And if the wages of sin is death, as they point out, and the consequences of sin is death, why is your Mashiach getting a consequence of sin, which is death on a tree? Because sin is imputed when you break the Torah. So if he gets death, and can you imagine that? You are the Mashiach that is sent. And by the time you get sent to do the mission, you get a death sentence from the Creator, carried out by the people who carry out the curse on you to hang you on a tree. That runs back to Deuteronomy chapter 21. Because you see now Deuteronomy 21 verse 23, to close it out, to read it again. For he that is hanged is accursed of the Most High. So whoever is hanged is cursed of the Most High. So if the Mashiach is sent by the Most High, but then he is hung, that means the Mashiach is sent by the Most High, but is cursed by the Most High. But you're going to say to me, yeah, he is cursed by the Most High to be a sin for you. No, but look at it here. What you don't always keep in mind is that the curse of hanging by the Most High is carried out by the people in an intelligent manner who measures things up with Torah to decide the kind of judgment that should be applied to the person. They have found the person guilty according to Torah, so they hang them and carry out the curse of the Most High. Just like the verses before, in Deuteronomy 21 verse 18 to 21, is saying like the son that won't do what is right is going to be judged and is going to die. So he gets a curse because he did something wrong. So shown here that this person is hanged is curse of the Most High. So the people decide based on Torah that the person has done something wrong, so they hang the person on the tree. So it is that this Christ has done something wrong by pretending to be the living Son of God. So they say, crucify him. Hang him on the tree. That was his sin. He pretended to be the one sent from God for your deliverance. When Israelites knew, according to Deuteronomy 28 and Leviticus 26, that if you don't do my Torah, you are going to be cursed in these many different ways, from the curses of Deuteronomy 28 and Leviticus 26. And then your redemption is not through a man that is hung on a tree, that is my son, but your redemption is going to be when I regather you from these nations that I sent you into and change your curses to give you blessings again. They knew that is how your redemption comes, when we are gathered, which is what we're waiting for, when we're gathered again and we receive the corn and oil and blessings like that. They knew that is how the redemption comes, not by one claiming to be here to die for your sins. So because of that, they identified that was his sin, his trickery, his deception. So they said, crucify him. He claims to be God's son. Crucify him. He claims to be equal with the Most High. Crucify him.